Xbox is currently undergoing its most significant leadership shift in 20 years. For over a decade, the brand was synonymous with one name, Phil Spencer. He was the executive who wore the graphic tees, standing on the E3 stage promising Xbox was for the gamers. But as we move into late 2024 and the early months of 2025, the air inside Microsoft's headquarters in Redmond has changed. The vibe-based leadership that defined the last era is being replaced by something colder and more calculated. Phil Spencer is transitioning away from his primary leadership role, handing the reins to Asha Sharma. This isn't just a change in management, it is a fundamental questioning of the green brand identity. For 20 years, the answer to what is Xbox was simple. It was a console you plugged into your TV. Today, that answer is fracturing. Is it a console, a service, or simply a publisher of massive intellectual properties? The where is centered in the offices of Redmond, but the impact is being felt across global gaming markets from Tokyo to London. Phil Spencer's legacy is one of redemption. He took the wreckage of the Xbox One launch, a disaster of high prices and confused messaging, and rebuilt it into a gamer-first ecosystem. He championed Game Pass, backward compatibility, and brand loyalty. He was the face of the redemption arc. However, the massive $69 billion acquisition of Activision Blizzard changed the gravity of the entire division forever. You cannot spend that kind of money without the corporate leaders demanding a massive immediate return on investment. Enter Asha Sharma. With a background in high-growth operations at companies like Meta and Instacart, Sharma represents a shift toward monetization, platform scalability, and rigorous ROI metrics. While Spencer focused on the soul of the brand and the vibe of being a gamer, Sharma is focused on the raw efficiency of a global platform. There is a palpable tension in the air regarding traditional console exclusivity versus the raw potential of selling software to everyone, regardless of what hardware they own. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. This internal debate is creating an immediate crisis of identity. Within the halls of Redmond, the core question is being asked with increasing frequency. Does Microsoft actually need a physical box to be successful in gaming? The industry is watching a contradictory dance known as Project Latitude, a strategy that involves bringing major Xbox titles to rival platforms like the PlayStation 5. For the core fan base, this feels like a betrayal. These are the people who invested hundreds of dollars in hardware, believing they were buying into a walled garden with unique benefits. Now, they see their exclusive titles leaking onto other systems, devaluing their investment and leaving them wondering if their favorite console has a future at all. The messaging is inconsistent, leaving players and employees alike grasping for a clear vision of what the next 5 years will look like for the brand. This has led to a strategic vacuum, a wait-and-see period that has the entire industry on edge. Critics and analysts are asking the same haunting question. Is Xbox becoming the new Sega, a former hardware giant turned software publisher, or is it becoming a more profitable, gaming-focused version of Netflix? The preliminary data tells a confusing and often contradictory story. Hardware sales are down significantly year over year, reflecting a waning interest in the traditional console cycle and the limitations of the Series X and S. Yet at the same time, software revenue is hitting record highs. The acquisitions are working, but they are working in a way that doesn't necessarily require a green box under the television. Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella is watching the profit and loss statements closely, and the pressure to pivot from growth to profitability has never been higher. The transition from the gamer-first era to the data-first era is not just starting, it is already here in this industry. To understand how Asha Sharma's data-driven vision eventually superseded Phil Spencer's vibe-heavy leadership, we must look back at the scar tissue that formed a decade ago. The 2013 launch of the Xbox One was a catastrophic failure of messaging and utility that nearly killed the brand in its infancy. Under previous leadership, Microsoft attempted to transform the console into a media center, famously prioritizing television features over actual gaming performance. The fallout was immediate and devastating, handing a generational victory to Sony and forcing Microsoft into a defensive position for years. This crisis paved the way for Phil Spencer to take the lead. His strategy rebuilt trust through extreme value and consumer-centric policies. He championed the redemption arc, introducing Game Pass as a loss leader that prioritized accessibility. The idea was simple: build a massive library and users will naturally flock to the hardware. For years, Microsoft ignored short-term profit for market share, treating the gaming division like a startup where growth was the only metric that mattered. This growth-centric strategy reached its conclusion with an unprecedented acquisition binge. By purchasing ZeniMax and Activision Blizzard for $69 billion, Microsoft wasn't just buying games, they were buying industry infrastructure. They wanted to own the intellectual property to ensure the green brand was the only place to play some of the biggest franchises in existence. However, the scale of these purchases changed the internal mathematics of the entire corporation. You cannot spend $70 billion and continue as a value-driven loss leader. The era of brand building ended the moment the ink dried on the final contracts, and the era of the spreadsheet began. The first sign of trouble was the apparent ceiling of Game Pass growth. Internal data revealed that subscriber growth on traditional console platforms had plateaued. While the PC market showed signs of expansion, it was not enough to offset the spiraling costs of blockbuster development. Every time Microsoft puts a massive AAA title like Halo onto Game Pass on its release day, they are effectively cannibalizing hundreds of millions of dollars in potential direct sales. Under Spencer, this was a necessary sacrifice. Under Asha Sharma and CEO Satya Nadella, it became a financial liability. Nadella's involvement signaled a massive shift in corporate philosophy. The mandate moved from growth at all costs to profitability and margin. This colder approach led to the shocking closures of studios like Tango Gameworks and Arcane Austin. These were casualties of a strategy that prioritized high ROI over artistic prestige or brand loyalty. This fiscal tightening fueled the intense debate over multi-platform releases, known as Project Latitude. A rift opened between the old guard, those who believed hardware must remain a walled garden, and the new guard led by Sharma, who saw a massive untapped market on rival platforms. The logic was undeniable. There are over 120 million PlayStation 5 owners currently unable to buy Microsoft's biggest games. When titles like Sea of Thieves successfully transitioned to PlayStation, and rumors swirled about Indiana Jones doing the same, internal friction reached a boiling point. Microsoft was transitioning from a direct competitor into the world's largest third-party software publisher for Sony's hardware. This transition created a hardware dilemma that threatens the existence of the physical console. During the Series X launch, there was technical superiority and renewed hope. Today, that is replaced by silence regarding future innovations. The rise of PC handhelds like the Steam Deck has eroded the niche the traditional console once occupied. If a consumer can play Xbox games on a handheld or a rival's console, the incentive to buy a dedicated box disappears. This is the why it matters loop. If software is everywhere, hardware becomes a hard sell for the average consumer. The brand is no longer tethered to a machine. But as that tether snaps, loyalists are left wondering if they are standing on a sinking ship. The sense of betrayal among the most loyal users is palpable as they see their ecosystem dissolving. The transition under Asha Sharma has crystallized into 3 strategic pillars designed to extract maximum value from the Activision Blizzard acquisition. The first is addressing the hardware trap. Microsoft has historically subsidized hardware costs to build market share, but Sharma views this as an unsustainable relic that limits potential growth. Her solution is to stop chasing the traditional mass market console buyer and instead pivot aggressively toward the mobile frontier. By leveraging King's massive reach with titles like Candy Crush alongside Activision's established mobile portfolio, Microsoft can bypass the console wars entirely. This leads to the third pillar, a platform-agnostic future. In this vision, Xbox is no longer a physical box under a TV, but a ubiquitous application pre-installed on every smart TV, cloud-capable handheld, and smartphone. The goal is to make the hardware choice irrelevant while the service becomes an omnipresent force in digital entertainment. This pivot carries heavy consequences for the entire gaming ecosystem. For the fans who spent years building digital libraries on Xbox hardware, there is a profound sense of betrayal. They fear a future where their digital purchases are trapped on legacy hardware without a clear path for support. Globally, the industry is bracing for a seismic shift. If Xbox retreats from the hardware arms race, Sony may secure a functional monopoly on high-end gaming consoles. Without a direct rival to keep hardware costs in check, consumers could face a reality of higher prices for both systems and subscription services, fundamentally changing the economics of the hobby. 3 potential scenarios now face the brand as it navigates this identity crisis. The first is the Sega route. where Microsoft eventually ceases all hardware production to become a massive multi-platform software powerhouse. The second is the premium niche path, where Xbox produces one final high-end enthusiast console and a dedicated handheld, catering exclusively to the hardcore loyalists who refuse to leave the ecosystem. The third and most likely path is ecosystem expansion. In this scenario, Xbox successfully transitions into a service that exists comfortably on PlayStation and Nintendo hardware, maintaining its unique brand identity through Game Pass while selling its blockbuster software on every screen imaginable. Within the walls of the Redmond headquarters, the atmosphere is a study in contrasts. Reports suggest internal morale among the old guard has reached a low point as the creative culture clashes with Asha Sharma's data-driven mandates. Conversely, the financial teams are increasingly optimistic, pointing to record software revenues and high margins as proof that the shift is working. The next 24 months will be the ultimate test of this new direction. Key milestones, such as the formal announcement of the next hardware generation and the performance of future franchise pillars like the next Halo, will determine if this gamble pays off. Success is no longer measured by units shipped to retailers, but by monthly active users across all digital screens. For the average Xbox Series X or S owner, the immediate future requires a pragmatic approach. While your current hardware remains a powerful machine, the value of the ecosystem is shifting decisively toward the cloud and Game Pass Ultimate. It is essential to recognize that your digital library's longevity is now tied to Microsoft's ability to maintain its service infrastructure across multiple platforms rather than just one dedicated console. The value proposition of Game Pass remains high, but the exclusivity that once defined the brand identity is rapidly evaporating. Ultimately, Xbox is not dying, but the version of the brand we grew up with is officially gone. We are witnessing the birth of a software titan that cares less about where you play and more about how much you pay. If Microsoft becomes the biggest publisher on the PlayStation Store, the question of who won the console war becomes a matter of perspective. As the dust settles on this leadership transition, the industry looks towards Sony. With their primary rival shifting strategies, how will they respond to a world where their greatest competitor is also their largest partner?